Okay, so this is, it takes 2 weeks?
A week.
1 week.
Yeah, I don't spend more than a week, but it's not easy.
Yeah. What is this about? Is it like a Italian, Mexican, or?
This one.
Yeah, kind of Mexican.
No,
yeah.
this is
That's what it looks
San
like.
Antonio.
San Antonio.
Yeah, San Antonio. I think that's the San Antonio.
Dr.
They have
Caiden.
titles on the cover.
Dr. Caiden, I'm teaching this comparative administration to undergraduate students from the University of Brasilia. So in order to organize my ideas, I was rereading the book we studied with you in 1985. And what I found is that you have a chapter there in about comparative administration. And so finally I get to the understanding that what was the purpose of comparing different I suppose different countries administration, different cities administrations, different states administrations, even differences between the administration of the executive power and the legislative power and the judicial powers. So meaning that I understood from what you said that there is not a public administration theory as something that will fit any country or any particular organization. So if you could help me to do the kickoff of this semester with some of your ideas in this regard, that would be very helpful.
Why study comparative? And why did I write the things that you commented about? Because much of the writings in comparative were written by American scholars who had never been outside the United States. So they actually didn't know anything about any other country in the world. Only knew about the United States. And when they did go overseas, they were upset because they were so different from the United States. And their idea, and I come straight out with it, and I've said this in many conferences, is they would like every country to be like the United States. I mean, that's it. That's how Americans behave whenever they go overseas. It's because it's not, I wish it was. And the answer is, first of all, what makes you think the United States is so well run? There are far better countries in the world, by far better administered, and have been for years. Even the so-called worst examples, okay, is wrong. Let's just take Brazil alone. If you were to read about Americans write about Brazil, you have an opinion of how come Brazil even exists? It's so incompetent, inefficient, and so on. Yeah, but then you get a case like Curitiba. How come Curitiba is one of the best run cities in the world? It's the same country of Brazil. The Brazilians who run it are Brazilians, have always lived in Brazil. What makes Curitiba, and Curitiba is not the only example. Local administration around Brazil varies tremendously. Yes, there are terribly run places, and all the big cities, alas, Belo Horizonte, okay, is poorly run, yes. Yeah, but there are other cities, Pelosa, and I can mention, that are far greater examples of excellent administration, good service, cheap, in other words, taxes not as high, and that you get a good deal. So that's in just a country, and every country is like that. There's good in every country, and there's bad in every country. There is no universalism here. That's the whole aspect of comparative. You have to understand tremendous variation, and every country, no matter how small, is quite different. One part of the country can be quite different, a different culture even. And if you generalize from one aspect, your generalizations are hopelessly wrong. So the second reason for comparison, apart from getting the real knowledge of what exists, is then when you have a comparison, you have to make some criteria of comparison. What's good? What's bad? What's better? What's worse? And that is an intellectual exercise. What makes it better? What are the assumptions you use about measuring? Now, what gave you this impression that the public transportations in Mexico City is terrific? It is. Mexico City couldn't run without this public transportation city. Now, the people grumble. Yes, because the reason why people grumble is overused. It's overused because it happens to be pretty good. It's prompt, it's on time, it's crowded. It's crowded, why? Because the government hasn't put enough investment into extending the system as Mexico City has grown. So you have exactly the same infrastructure as you had 20 years ago, with maybe 2-3 million more people using the system, which it's not used to. And so, so the second reason is the comparison. I mean, that's the comparison. But then behind, unless you do the comparison, comes the third real reason: you can't theorize. You can't make these generalizations and theories. What's good theory? What's bad theory? A good theory, it conforms to reality. It isn't an hypothesis which is unproven. A good theory you can prove. And there isn't much theory in comparison. Okay, because everybody takes a very, what we call idiosyncratic view of it. Everybody is biased in themselves. My country, right or wrong. Or my country's much superior because you know your country, okay? You have to be very careful then to be, when you theorize, and when we point to the good theories, and one, for instance, like Fred Riggs, who unfortunately recently died, his generalizations, his theories were universalistic, and that's what people objected to. People who didn't understand that he was saying, what he was saying, would criticize him because it didn't apply to their country. Actually, it did. It did apply. I get this now, I do with, for instance, corruption. Corruption exists everywhere. What do you mean by corruption? Everybody has a different interpretation what is corrupt, what is not. But the core of corruption is behavior that everybody resents. That everybody feels, for all kinds of reasons, feels disappointed, cheated, or whatever it is, a victim. And it's corrupt behavior, okay, but what is the root of corruption? Okay, and then you find it's a highly complex, a highly complicated subject. And you have to understand it before you can come to the reason, well, how are you going to reduce it? Everybody wants to, every government that comes in power says it's going to get rid of corruption, reduce it. Of course they do no such thing. So why don't they do such thing? Because it's so, what do you mean by corruption? And you have to say, what's important to a country? Okay, what do countries really value? And the answer is, first of all, they value survival. To survive, you have to cheat and you have to lie, you have to have spies, you have to do all kinds of, you have to involve yourself in war, which involves killing people or be killed, which is highly immoral. It's corrupt. Yes, but how are we going to survive otherwise? The second one is stability. If you don't have stability, you have nothing. What do you need to stable? You need authority. You need discipline. You have obligations and duties. How do you enforce them when people don't want... Now, everybody wants rights. Nobody wants obligations. And it's everywhere in the world is the same. Everybody wants... Nobody's prepared to pay taxes, for instance, which is an obligation as a citizen. Nobody wants to serve. I mean, service is actually an obligation, particularly in a democratic society. Otherwise, if you don't serve, you get autocracy. You get bureaucrats or autocrats. And bureaucracy is based on a military form of organization which is autocratic. It doesn't pretend to be democratic. How do you rule people on a large scale? By being democratic.